Greetings, friends and future friends. Today's video is on the Korg Pa5x. I call this video MIDI versus styles. Now, a few weeks ago, someone asked me the question, how can you import a MIDI file into a style? Can you create a style from a MIDI file? And I'll be honest with you, in my studio, I would not do that because I have all the control of the computer that runs to all the different keyboards and modules. And in fact, I have a cable going into the Korg Pa5x. So if I wanted to control some of its sounds, I could control it from the computer. So I wouldn't normally do that. But the question was asked, and I was going to see if I could find an answer. So about 15, 20 hours later, I found out this information that I want to pass on to you. And this is the most important thing. Bringing a MIDI file into the Pa5x is not a big deal. And it'll actually let you see the markers you created, and you can control that MIDI file with the markers. But to create a MIDI file and bring it into a style is a pretty large job. I tried for hours and hours to bring a MIDI file into the style editor to create a style from the MIDI file, and I could not do it. So finally what I did is I took one of my styles and I exported it out to a MIDI file. So now my style is a MIDI file, and I brought it into my computer. There's where I was so surprised. Now this style is only a CV length of 8 measures, but when I brought it into my software, it's like over 100 measures. How can that be? Well, I finally figured out that in these arranger keyboards, what they're doing is they're looking at, when you bring a style up, it's basically a large MIDI file, and it has all the information of that style is on that MIDI file. So in other words, if you're playing intro 1, it's over here. If you're playing styles or variations, is all along that MIDI file. So it'll go here and play a little bit, or go over here and loop, or whatever. So all the information of the 3 intros, the 4 variations, the 4 fills, the 3 exits, the break, everything that's located on that style is in that MIDI file. So to create that MIDI file from scratch would be a large task. And I also found out that the Pa5x will not accept the MIDI file unless you have all that information. So when I exported the file out, I could actually bring that file back in, and I'll show you when we go into the studio, it allowed me to bring that file back in. But some things had changed. So let's go into the studio and I'll show you a little closer view of what I found. Okay, I've got the Korg Pa5x all fired up. Chain to Fools version 1 loaded in player 1. And if I hit an E minor here and hit the player, playing it real nice. Excellent. One of my favorite styles. Now, one thing I want you to look at real quick is up here where it says variation. Now you have the buttons on the deck of the keyboard, but if you hit this up here where it says variation, it's actually going to bring up those buttons: intros, variations, fills, and endings, exit. But I just want you to be aware of that area, because when we play MIDI files, that's going to be important. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you what a style looks like as a MIDI file. So we're going to go hit record, hit style edit, and now we're in the style edit mode. Now, one thing I want you to look at real quick is that you have across the bottom, you have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. When a MIDI file comes in to the keyboard, it's going to look for 16 tracks. Why? I don't know why, but it's going to ask for 16 tracks. But you're only going to look for information on 9 through 16. So the first 8 tracks will usually be empty, and the 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16th track is where all your information is going to be. That's one important thing in understanding how this keyboard understands MIDI. The other thing I want you to look at is the CV length is only 8 measures. And that's something I want to bring up when I show you this MIDI file. So let's create a MIDI file. What we're going to do is hit Menu, hit Import Export. It's going to say Import SMF, Import Groove, Export SMF. And we're going to hit the Export. And you can see it's already labeled it Chain to Fools MIDI. Now, if I hit Execute, it's going to create that MIDI file. Now, I already did that for this tutorial, so let's exit out of this, And if we go to File, you're going to see I have Chain of Fools MIDI. That's a MIDI file that was just created by the style that we had, Chain of Fools. Okay, let's take a look at this MIDI file in the computer. You can see that this file is huge. And that's what I was saying about to create this file from scratch. There's a lot of information. Matter of fact, if we look at it this way, there is 52 plus markers just in the first 25 measures. And if you look, this thing is going over 100 measures. I think this style now is actually a MIDI file that goes to 125 measures. So there is a lot of information on this MIDI file that I just exported from that style. And again, what it's going to do when it uploads this style into the keyboard, it's uploading this huge MIDI file, and then it's going to play it with all these markers. I mean, there's 52 markers in the first 25 measures. I didn't even count how many markers there are in the whole MIDI file. But this is what I'm trying to explain to you, is that to create this from scratch would be a large task, because what you're going to do is going to have to replicate all these markers, because when you hit a variation button on the deck of the keyboard, what you're doing is you're actually hitting a location key for that keyboard to go to. So somewhere in this huge MIDI file, variation 1, variation 2. There are some videos out there explaining all this, but it's pretty complex, what you have to do to create a large MIDI file like this. Okay, now, this is Chain of Fools, the styles. Let's bring Chain of Fools version 1, the MIDI file. So we'll go here, hit Song, and we'll go down here and hit that, exit. And now what we have done is bring it in as a MIDI file. If we go over here to see markers, you're going to see that we have over, what do we have? We have like 25 markers. Actually, all 15 buttons are on the screen. So what does that mean? If I go over here and push play, now what you've done is brought in a MIDI file that was created from a style, and instead of playing it, again, when you play a MIDI file, you're not going to be able to change the key when you play something on the keyboard. This is a complete MIDI file of Chain of Fools and all the parts. And if we go in here and hit play again, you can see that there's fills in here. All the different variations. So now you're looking at the style through the MIDI player, and you're going to see that it's very complex. Again, it's showing you how an arranger keyboard looks at these MIDI files. It brings them in, and then it plays that certain section of the MIDI file. And then you're changing the chord pattern when you hit the different chord on the keyboard. So it's very intensive. There's actually 25 markers that are visible, and that's not even showing you all the markers that are actually on the file. This is 25 markers that the Korg Pa5x is recognizing to play these different variations, and I still haven't figured. I guess there could be a code of maybe the E's are endings and the V's are variations, but this is something that is very technical when it comes to understanding the files. So again, I brought this up just to show you how intense the MIDI file is when you're creating a style.
Okay, now I'm going to show you how to create a style from a MIDI file. Again, this is just taking a MIDI file that I created from a style and bringing it in. But there's a couple things I want to show you. So we have this MIDI file up. Let's hit record, hit new style. Now, what we do is go yes. Now, what we can do is go over here to menu, go down here to import, export, import, say select import, and then here is the Chain of Fools MIDI thing. We click on that, exit out. Now, if we execute, it's going to create a new style. You know, if we see execute, it's going to make us save a new style. So I'm going to get out of this because I already did that. And what it is we'll go here and we'll go to styles and go to one. And this is the style that I created, exit. Now this is a style that I created without any alterations. I exported out Chain the Fools into a MIDI file and then I brought it back in. So let's play it. We'll go to E minor here. First thing you're going to notice is that it's totally different from Chain of Fools. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. If we bring up, go over here to player 2, and we bring up Chain of Fools, exit. The first thing I want you to look at when we do this is, let's go to mixer. So there's Chain of Fools. There's the original style that we exported the MIDI file out. And here is the new style. The first thing you're going to see is that all this down here is different. The instruments are different. So even bringing in a MIDI file, as difficult as that was to make sure everything is intact, you bring that MIDI file in and you're still going to have to adjust the different instruments because, again, here is the new style I just created. Here's Chain of Fools. You can see all these instruments are different. So you're going to have to, when you bring that new style in from your MIDI file, you're going to have to assign the instruments to create that style. Now, we know there's a big difference because if we start these both at the same time, so you can see bringing in a MIDI file and creating a style, even from the same MIDI file of a other style, can change things. The instruments can change and some other things can change in there. So that's one thing you have to understand. So now what I did, variation 1. Now you can see that this new style 2 that I created sounds a lot like the original style Chain the Fools 1. But here was something, and I don't know whether it's in the progression or the way I brought it back in from my software, but if I go to mixer and we go to tuning, you're going to see that Chain the Fools, I have everything 0. But I had to actually bring the bass down 8 half steps and all the other instruments up +4 to make it sound like the original style. So, what's the takeaway of all this? The takeaway is that creating a MIDI file to become part of a style is a very difficult thing if you're creating it from scratch. So, I recommend 2 things if you really want to make a style out of your MIDI file. 1, find a style that's close to your MIDI file and edit it. You know, when you go into these styles and you hit record, hit style edit, There's so much stuff that you can do in this style to make it sound right. And someone said about, step writing. Well, you can come over here and go in events. And if we go over here to bass, here's all the bass notes. If you go over here to the drums, here's all the drum beats. So if we exit out of this, say you're not a good drummer or a good bass player or understand how to play really well in time. You don't have to. You can actually go into the record edit of the style edit, go into menu, go down to event edit, and you can actually plug in each bass line or drum track. And then remember, it's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. These are the 16 of the MIDI files. That's the way it would look. So you're only recording 9 tracks. So the takeaway in all this is these MIDI files that need to be created to make a style work in the PA5X are very large and complicated. If you're into that and you find somewhere that you can figure out what is doing what and you can do that, that's great. If you like your MIDI file and you want to create a style by it, what you're going to have to do is either find a style that's closest to your MIDI file and edit it. I showed you there's ways to edit these styles and you can make it work. Or take a style that you like that's comparable to your MIDI file, export it out, figure out how to edit it, and then bring it back into the style. But remember, as I've showed you here, that doesn't guarantee it's going to sound just like the original style you created. The style that you create in this keyboard might not accept that MIDI file the same way, so there's a lot of things you're still going to have to adjust. There's a lot of work involved in that. Okay, I want to show you a MIDI file I created from scratch and how it plays in the Korg Pa5x, and show you how trying to create a style with that MIDI file. So we'll go over here, hit song, and it's MIDI's test song, exit. And if we play it, now what I've done, if we go up here to markers, I've created 6 markers. So if we look at the software, you're going to see that I have 16 tracks. I exported out 16 tracks, but I actually only recorded on track 9, 10, 14, and 15. So I actually exported out 16 tracks of MIDI, but I only recorded 4, but you have to do that because remember, 9 through 16 is where the styles and the MIDI is going to be picked up with the Korg Pa5x. And you can see it's a simple file. So what happened? I created it here. I created my markers. You can see up on top, I have markers. Brought it into the Korg Pa5x, and you can see the markers are right there. So if there was an instance where you had a MIDI song that was pretty intricate and you wanted to play it out, you could bring it into the Korg Pa5x and play it that way. And I can touch these markers here on the screen, or now the deck of the keyboard has gone to the marker side, and I can go down here and play any one of these. So what does that mean? If you do have a MIDI song that you like, you don't have to go to an intensive trying to figure out how to make it into a style. You can actually write a full-blown MIDI song, and then what you're going to have to do is bring it into the Pa5x. Now, the only thing you're going to have to do is go to the mixer, go to the main, and then you're going to have to select what instruments are going to be on there. Now, again, here's the mistake I made already. Look, all acoustic. What's going on here, John? Everything's messed up. No, because that's tracks 1 through 8. There's nothing on them. Now we go to track 9 through 16, and there you see there's my bass and standard drum kit. So then what you could do is bring in your MIDI file and save the MIDI file and have all your different instruments here, and you could actually play that MIDI file in the keyboard. Let's exit out of this real quick. So if you had a chorus, say a chorus, like if what I did here is I have 1, let's hit 1 and we'll hit play. And then we'll say 2 is my chorus. And when I hit the 2 button, it'll go right to 2 after that measures. So you bring your MIDI song in, your MIDI file, create your instruments, and then through the markers, you could play any part of that MIDI file that you wanted. If you had, say, 1 is my verse and 2 is my chorus, all I have to do is push the 1 button and then push the 2 button, and then so on and so forth. And then down here, if your markers don't show up when you transfer them into the computer from your software, you can add or delete markers. So say, and then what you can do is when you go down here and edit, you can actually change the name of the marker and change the timing of that marker. Cancel. So that's one cool way to work a MIDI file in the PA5X. You know, upload it, then you have all your markers. Again, you have the marker numbers on the deck of the keyboard, and you actually have up here, if you touch this, you have these markers here. You can loop it, you can auto scroll it if you want it to keep going. And that's how you can control a MIDI file. Okay, I want to give you another example of how the Korg Pa5x is looking at these MIDI files. And there's certain criteria, certain things that have to be on that file or it won't accept it. So let's go and hit record, hit new style. Yeah, we know that. Now we're going to create a new style. So we're going to go over here to menu. We're going to go here to import file. Now, we know this Chain the Fools version 1 MIDI is a style I created before, and we know that works because if we select it and exit, you see it comes right up. And we could actually hit execute, and this would create a style from that MIDI file. But let's go select again. But let's go on my little file, and you see the size difference between that file and my file. Let's go exit. It won't find. Let's do it again. Maybe a mistake. Nope. Pa5x MIDI song test 00. Exit. It will not recognize that MIDI file. So what's that telling you? That's telling you that even though you create a MIDI file, if it doesn't have the certain things that the 5X is looking for, these certain codes for what means variation 1, you know, intro, endings, all these markers, if they're not there, all the information on that MIDI file isn't there, then it's not going to allow you to bring that MIDI file in and create a style. So again, I'm back to that. If you're really set on creating a style from your MIDI file, take and export out a MIDI file, try to adapt that to your MIDI file, and then bring it back in. But again, I'll do it again so I'm not messing up myself. Nope, won't select. Select. But again, if I hit the Chain of Fools, which is based on an original style, exit, you can see it comes up and you're ready to create a style. So again, the takeaway of all this is, the final thoughts on this. If you're going to create a MIDI file, you really like your MIDI file and you want to create a style, that style has to have certain information on that MIDI file or it won't import it. My suggestion is take a style and make it sound like your MIDI file, because there's tons of ways of editing styles in this Pa5X. If that's not going to satisfy you, find a style that you like the best and then export it out into your software, edit it, and then maybe that'll help you make it sound like your MIDI file, and then try and bring it back into the Korg Pa5X. Again, I can't stress to you enough that how the Pa5X looks at styles is it looks at it as a long MIDI file, and when you hit those different buttons, it's playing and looping certain sections of that MIDI file. So to create a large MIDI file that size with all that information that the Pa5X is going to need to create a style is a large task.
Well, I hope this video helps you understand how the Pa5X handles MIDI files. There's some things you can do very easy, and there's some things that take a little bit of work. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. You'll help us grow the channel. That way we can bring you more cool stuff. So take care, my friends, and thanks for watching.